Well, I'm out at the field again, around sunrise. We're having a late fall, late season Indian summer or whatever. It's unseasonable warm spell. There's actually a heat warning for this weekend. They're saying that the humidex may go up to 40 later today, which is crazy because it's like September the 23rd. But anyway, I was making sure that's not part of my plane. No, it's a random piece of balsa wood. The purpose here this morning, the main purpose, is to maiden the Flite Test Simple Storch. Just built this from the speed build kit. This is the Flite Test water resistant foam. These are beaver wheels I put on. I bought a set of the Fly Zone beaver wheels and put on because they make good wheels. Built this pretty much as the kit says, except I couldn't get the motor they recommended for it, so I had to use what I could get. This is I put a motor that I got from Great Hobbies in. This was the closest they could provide me with in terms of motor, and they gave me a good deal on the motor, but it was kind of an odd motor they had with no mounting hardware or anything. I did a couple of things. I put an extra piece of popsicle stick here because I was a bit concerned that the connection between the one side and the other side of the elevators was a little weak. I've done it with the flaps, separate flaps and ailerons. And yeah, I had to muck around quite a bit mounting the motor because this motor's kind of big. I've mounted it. It wouldn't mount on their firewall. I've got their pod in, but I've got the pod in further forward than they intended it to be in, and then basically I've glued it in. It's not swappable. I didn't make it removable. I've got the pod glued in. I hope that's going to work. And unfortunately, when I tack the motor down, I got it pointing a little bit to the right, which is not good because I'd rather it was pointing a little bit to the left, but I hope that's not going to cause us serious problems. It might. I might have to take the motor off and remount it, but it's not going to be easy to do, so I wasn't going to be keen on doing it if I didn't have to. This ESC needs arming. You have to put it all the way up to the top and then back down again before the motor will start. Oh, good job we checked the controls. Always got to check the controls. I guess I didn't do that. We've got to reverse the elevators for sure. Up, down, rudder. Oh, I'm going to reverse the rudder too. Right, left, and ailerons. The ailerons don't need reversing. Right, left, left. You know what? I got the rates about where they said. I did use their rate gauge, the Flite Test rate gauge that came with it, to check the rates, and the high and low rates are about where they said they should be. That's the low rate. Looks quite high rates to me. But I'd almost be inclined to make the rates a bit lower than that, but well, I'm definitely going to keep it on the low rates for now. The vertical stabilizer looks alarmingly small to me, but that's the design, and lots of people have made it, and it flies, so presumably it should be okay. It is, of course, being the morning, somewhat on the wet side, not as wet, and there's almost, I can't detect any wind, basically, which is always good for a maiden. I'm not going to put a camera on the plane. Not for the initial attempt. So, who knows, I'm a little bit worried about this in various respects. I'm a little bit worried that the motor may be pulling to one side slightly. The rates seem a little higher than I'd be inclined to make them.
Take off flaps.
Shall we put a little bit of flap on? I suppose we might as well.
Throttle cut off.
Okay, now the ESC is armed. You've got to put it all the way up to maximum and back down to arm that ESC. Here goes nothing. Whoa. Well, I guess it does pull a little to the left, but not super violently. Let's put those.
Flaps up.
Put those flaps up. Well, this is a tried and true design, of course, that Flite Test have you know, made and beta tested, and lots of people have made, so it should be a reliable design, I guess. That's hands off. So he's flying pretty straight. I put a little bit of left rudder trim in to counter the fact that the motor's pulling right rudder trim, I beg your pardon, to counter the fact the motor's pulling a little bit to the left. But it's only, it only seems to be a very slight effect. It doesn't seem to be a major effect. I've got the CGs about where they said it may be a hair. Josh Bickler, I think, recommended 2 inches. He says you can have a variety here. You can move it backwards and forwards, but I've got it maybe, it's pretty much close to that. Pretty much close to the 2 inches. It might be a hair in front of the 2 inches, but not much. Got the battery fairly far back. It's a 2200, and I've got it fairly far back to do that because I've got a fairly heavy motor on the front, and the motor I think is also mounted a bit further forward than they intended the motor to be mounted. So to get the CG balanced out, I've moved the battery fairly well back into that cavity in the body, and I've got a little plastic case for screws wedged on top of the battery in the hope that will the battery won't move, because it was a bit hard to get the battery really fixed down well onto the Velcro there. It's a bit awkward pushing it in underneath the pod there and trying to get it on the Velcro so it won't move. I was afraid if it was just on the Velcro that if I looped the thing or whatever, it might fall off and start wandering all over the place and completely mess up my CG, or even possibly fall out. I don't think it would fall out, but still, if it starts shifting. Anyway, I guess we'll try a loop. Whoa, that's low rates? I don't think so. Not really. That's why I really did measure it with the gauge. They give you a little gauge, you know, just a piece of foam that's marked out to cut with the angle for the low and high rates, and I really did measure the rates, but that doesn't look like low rates to me.
Time remaining 4 minutes.
I would tend to shift the rates down. I would not call that low rates. You know, I'm only using a touch of elevator there at low rates to produce that loop. To me, low rates, I should need to take quite a lot of elevator to produce a loop. That's what I'd call low rates. If I can produce a tight loop like that with just, you know, maybe a quarter up elevator, that I wouldn't call that low rates. It's okay. I mean, I don't mind these rates. They're perfectly flyable, but I would call these definitely more like mid rates. Yeah, the roll is not snappy, but then I guess it's not a plane that's designed to have a snappy roll. It rolls, but it's not snappy.
Time remaining 3 minutes.
I also wonder if it wouldn't be a good idea. I've got 4 rubber bands holding the wing on, 2 on each side. Well, 2 they crossed over, but like 2 cross one way, 2 cross the other way. I kind of wonder if it wouldn't be better to put more rubber bands on, but these are just the ones that came with it. Yeah, the roll, I wouldn't reduce the rate on the ailerons, but I would tend to reduce the rate on the elevator. The elevator seems to have a lot of rate. What about the rudder? Just trying the rudder. Yeah, even the rudder rate, I'm not sure it needs reducing, but I would be inclined to reduce the elevator rate. But not the ailerons, I don't think. It's not terribly snappy on the ailerons. Let's just put it up. Just put it up to mid rates for a minute. Not, as I say, I don't want any more rate on the rudder or the aileron. But the ailerons I wouldn't mind, because I mean this is the smaller ailerons. I don't know whether it helps much really. You know, it's not like what they call the flapper-on option or the full-length ailerons. It's just got the small ailerons on the end and the flaps inside. And they work, the ailerons, but they're not super positive. Anyway, for a first flight, we should probably be thinking of coming in. we should probably be thinking of coming in for a landing now, because we've only got about 2 minutes left on my battery timer, and I think actually the battery, actually only got 1 minute and 22 seconds left.
Take off flaps.
I think the battery would probably go longer, but we don't want to push it for a first flight.
Time remaining 1 minute.
Don't want to stall it, but equally I don't want to bang it into the ground hard. Okay, well, it'll probably taxi. I imagine there's no reason it wouldn't taxi, I would have thought, on those wheels, although we don't want to throw up lots of water on it.
Flaps up. Throttle cut on.
No, that's okay. It doesn't seem to have been throwing up too much water on the bottom. It's not that wet a day today. I don't know. I'd almost be, as I say, I'd be inclined to maybe dial the elevator rate down a little bit. But not the aileron. Where are we? Oh, I never put my strap on to let go. It's just got a little, no, that's low aileron rates. Anyway, okay. That's, we got 36 seconds left from a 7-minute timer. 36 seconds left from a 7-minute timer, so about 6.5 minutes. And the 2200 battery is at 11.8. 3.94. 9495. So yeah, you could go more with the 2200. Well, they do say, I think you can fly it even with a lower battery. 2200 is considered a reasonably large battery, mind you, because that's all entirely random, because they're talking about a different motor to what I'm flying it with. Nonetheless, I would say we could safely change the timer to 8 minutes, if not 9. Oh, there we go. Since the first flight with the Flite Test Simple Storch here seemed to go fairly okay, there don't seem to be any major, unless they suddenly show up, there are no major problems with its flying showed up on that flight, I thought we'd try and mount the ESC camera on it. Well, I don't think we need to point it down quite that much, though, do we? No. The problem with the ESC is, you know, you've not got any kind of viewfinder. The drone view, you can look in the Wi-Fi and see where it's pointing. This, you just got to kind of gauge where it's pointing. I hope that's pointing in a sensible direction. Sun in my eyes there. I'm trying to get in to turn the camera on to start it. Well, it's turned on, but to start it recording. Oops, what's that? I don't know. What was it? Nothing breaking, I don't think. Oh, I think I'm going to have to use a screwdriver. Sorry, if I can find one, because I can't get in there to the to press the button to start it recording. Yep, that's recording now. I got the tape in the way. It's a little awkward to mount it. I sincerely hope the tape doesn't damage the surface of the masking tape I'm using to mount the camera. Doesn't damage the surface of this foam. This is the Flite Test water-resistant foam that they supplied with this. It's the speed build kit. I picked the speed build kit up when I was at Great Hobbies, and the motor I got from Great Hobbies as well, though it's not one they stock regularly. It's just was an odd one they had in that they gave me a good deal on because they didn't really know too much about it. It came with absolutely nothing, no mounting hardware, no paper or anything, but it seems to work okay. So what is it? It's an 810 kV motor, I think, isn't it? 900 kV. 900 kV motor. And I've got an 8x6 propeller on it.
Throttle cut off. Take off flat.
A little bit of flat while on the ESC. Sorry, just trying to seat my hat again here. Put lots of bug repellent on. Still getting bugs. It's a bit buggy this back end of the year. Up elevator to keep the tail down initially. Takes off pretty quickly. Doesn't need much of a run to take off. Does not need much of a run to take off, because now the problem is the sun is really on the horizon now, so I've got to mind I don't blind myself with the sun. The cameras generally, fortunately, deal with the sun fairly well. Always worries me a little bit pointing cameras into the sun, but it's pretty much unavoidable when you're flying them on a plane, and we just hope that they're programmed enough that their sensors can shut down and resist and don't get damaged from the sun. I did not change the rates. I thought I might change the elevator rates, but I didn't. I did actually. Now I did change the timer. I added an extra minute to the timer since it seemed to me I could readily add another minute to the timer from what I had before. It was pretty random before. But having flown one battery and sensed it, that's more for the ailerons than anything else. He certainly doesn't need any extra rate for the elevators. The elevators have tons of throw. But he doesn't roll too snappily. I'd be happier. I almost wish maybe I'd put the full-length ailerons now, because I'd be happier with a snappier roll. In the long run, it's just, nicer to have that ability to roll more snappily. It looks as if you're just not going to roll very snappily with this. It'll roll, but not what you'd call snappily. Well, that's about it. Well, that's not high rates, admittedly. That's mid rates, but. And I'm sure, I'm quite prepared to believe a better flyer can make it roll better. I have my limitations. Let's put it on high rates, just for a minute. Yeah, well, yes, it does roll more snappily on the high rates. Naturally, you'd expect it to. But you could kind of do with the high rates for what I would almost like here is a combination of what's on the high rates for the ailerons, and but lower rates for the elevator. Rudder's about right where it is. Yeah, see, I prefer that. I hope those 4 rubber bands are strong enough to hold that wing on thoroughly. I definitely prefer the high rates for the elevator. I prefer the high rates for the elevator, but for the ailerons, I'm sorry, I'm confusing things. I prefer the high rates for the ailerons, but the elevator does not need so much rate. The elevator has tons of authority. So the elevator rate could be dialed down, but the aileron rate I tend to want to keep at the full. So I may adjust rates. I'll have a look at it on the ground, see what we can do, but I may adjust rates to allow me to do that, to give me a combination of rates that gives me. It's no harm to have plenty of rudder authority. I think I'd
4 minutes.
What I'd like is almost what's currently high rates for aileron and rudder, but less than the current low rates for elevator. That's, I think, what I'd be most comfortable with. A little bit less elevator, but as not basically as much rudder and yeah, see, there's tons of elevator there. I'm just not using the elevator because there's way more than I need. There's way more elevator than I need. But the rudder's not enormous. And the ailerons are not enormous either, and you know, he's got a fairly big wingspan.
Time remaining 3 minutes.
That's out of 8 as well. I mean, you know, I'm certainly not complaining. I'm just fiddling with details. It's a very good flying plane, and well, I mean, it's been, you know, it's a design that was been highly verified and beta tested and made by umpteen people. So you'd expect it to be a reliable design. It seems to track fine, despite having such a, you know, it really has. Yeah, we don't really have terrific vertical either with this motor. It's not got like that much power. It's not overpowered. I thought it might have way more power than I needed with this motor, because it seems like rather a large motor for it, but honestly, it's got enough power, but it certainly doesn't feel overpowered. Oh, well, I think we'll think of bringing it in for a landing again now.
Time remaining 2 minutes.
Yeah. It tracks fine. The odd thing is it doesn't have a lot of aileron sensitivity. It doesn't roll all that terrifically, but on the other hand, if anything, it seems to be least stable in roll. Oh well. But it tracks. I'm surprised it tracks as well as it does. That sun is really a bit much, isn't it? I don't want to fly into that sun because I won't be able to see if I fly into that sun. There we go. Didn't actually, I haven't found the stall speed. I should probably find the stall speed. I was getting pretty close to stalling there, I think. Oops. Unintended. Bit of an unintended turn at the end there. I think I'm going to have to take it back to the bench to turn the camera off, because I don't think I can get at the button on the camera without using a screwdriver. The onboard camera, that is. Well, no complaints really so far. I mean, I know I'm wittering about details, but no real complaints. It flies very well on the whole. As I say, knowing that, having flown it now, I might have, if I think that's turned that off, if I'd known what I know now after flying it, I might have been inclined to put the full-length ailerons rather than bothering with the flaps to give it more aileron authority, because you don't really need the flaps very much. I'm not going to muck around changing it now, but no, I don't think so. I've got the flap servos in and everything now, but I'm, you know, I might be inclined, knowing what I know now, to have preferred perhaps building it with the full-length ailerons to give it more aileron authority, because I'm sure it would take off absolutely fine without flaps. It really doesn't need the flaps for takeoff and landing. You can use them, but it doesn't need them. Anyway, it certainly flies fine. I'm not complaining about it. I'm generally very pleased. I'm a teeny bit worried by the fact that the plane seems to be showing some stress marks here on the wing. It looks as if the wing, you know, it looks as if the wing's been trying to fold a little bit here. This wasn't like this before I flew it. It's a little worrying, that is. what can you do? It's got that box spar in it here with, you know, like a foam folded in a box, and then the wooden things, but it looks as if there's been some tendency of the foam to fold, the wing to fold here at the root, especially the left wing, for whatever reason. I just hope that doesn't presage ill that the, you know, the thing, you know, because obviously if the wing folds in flight, you're sunk. I don't know. It may, I mean, it may not indicate anything very much. You know, the wing itself, I don't know. It's hard to tell. It still sort of feels fairly intact. We live in hopes. Anyway, what can you do? It's, you know, a plane built from foam board. Yeah, we'll do what we can. If it does, it does. We hope not. But certainly flew fine so far. But as I say, there is a bit of a sign the wing was maybe folding a little more than you know, was showing some stress. Maybe I was doing things you shouldn't do with it. I don't know. I didn't think I was doing anything particularly dynamic with it, really.